Yeah, well, dude, welcome, Paul Yacoubian. You even brought me some whiskey. This is awesome. Thank you. So, Paul is the founder and CEO of Copy.ai, which rocketed to popularity as one of the very first platforms on the planet to utilize GPT-3. Back when it was like you had to tie in with an API and everything.
That's right.
You couldn't just use OpenAI.
No, you couldn't. They didn't have an application.
And you were not like a computer science person before that.
I'm not. I'm a business person, investor. I love technology, and no, I had not started a company before, and not technical.
So here's how I found you guys. Obviously, I run a writing company, so I'm very interested when a computer can write for you, because I'm like, this will either take my job or make it way better. And so I was looking at all these different products. I think you had a product called Headlines.ai or something.
That was a different company. Yeah.
Or it's called
We had taglines.
Taglines. Yeah.
There were a lot of different AI companies.
Yeah, it was back in the day when it was like the AI, at best, it could make like a few sentences.
Right.
Or something like that.
Exactly.
How did you put that together then, if you're not a computer guy?
So, I mean, we had used GPT-2 when it had just first gotten launched in 2019. And it couldn't really put words together in a way that made any sense. But sometimes it would string it together and your brain would like make it work. And at that point, I was like, man, when computers can talk, what are they going to say? Like, they could create anything, because you can create anything you want really with text already. That's what people do. And so, just trying to like plot out what's the timeline going to be like for this trend to play out, where companies would find value in these models. And our timelines were like 7 years, 10 years, like long enough away you don't need to think about it or worry about it. But then what they saw was, when they made these models 100 times the size, it actually did hit that tipping point of utility. And so 6 months later, they launched GPT-3, and instantly you use it and you like ask it to brainstorm stuff. It brainstorms things that make sense. And so it didn't take a rocket scientist to go, okay, the time is now to actually go build something and figure out what do people actually want.
I mean, were you surprised by that? Because it's just like all of a sudden GPT-2 is just like this dumb, like it almost felt like one of those SEO spinner services.
Not to me.
No,
because you could create original things. So if the way I used it, I was like, okay, it can't really help me with whatever I need for work. What can I do with it? And so it was very creative. So I was using it to create science fictional products, and then it would generate a sci-fi product. You'd Google it, it wouldn't exist. And I'm going, this is a fountain of creativity. That was a mind-blowing moment. That was an aha moment for me.
So you were originally using it for like brainstorming.
For creativity, yeah. So because it's a compressed model of the internet. So it's not going to be exactly accurate all the time, at least in the early iterations of it, because the models weren't that big.
And so originally, the way I found you, I think you had Taglines AI, and you were just charging, I don't know, $20 a month, whatever the number was. I remember signing up because I was like, I have to see this.
Yeah.
And I was using it, and I was just like, this is pretty cool. I didn't think like this is going to take anyone's job right away, but I thought maybe someone who writes headlines could use this to brainstorm 20 headlines real quick.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And that was our thinking too. We had 5 other MVPs that we had built and launched in 90 days, and Taglines.ai was one of the ones.
Can you talk about some of those? I haven't heard of those.
Yeah, one was a Slack bot where you could just chat with it in Slack, and then we didn't get authorization to launch that from OpenAI. They thought it was a safety risk.
This is when you have to prove to OpenAI that you could.
They didn't have a review process, and they had never really opened it up for commercial applications. And so they were trying to figure it out as they went along. But I was like, if I can talk to a model, like I'm just going to chat with it. It's the same thing I would do with a person.
Yeah.
So that's going to be the winning interface. And then they were like, no, you can't do that. And I'm like, okay, that's still going to be the winning interface. But in the meantime, let's scope it down a little bit and niche down like, who pays today for creative words? And roughly it was like top down thinking. It's like marketing. Okay, well, what kinds of marketing content would people pay for, and what can this actually do?
Okay.
Right out of the box, it can't do like a really long form article or piece that's going to be very low quality. But the tagline, that's hard. And when we talk to marketers, like people at agencies or inside companies, they did need to brainstorm like 100 of those tagline things or slogan like things for ad copy for their clients. Like one guy that was a early customer of ours, he had 3 clients that all did garage door sales, and he ran their Facebook ads for them. And it's like, how many different ways across years can you actually like pitch this to people, right? And try to keep things fresh. So for them, it was very much like this creative bottleneck that they were trying to overcome from a business standpoint.
And while you were coming up with this idea, are you trying to think? So the guy that writes Facebook ads, he's kind of directly like linked to the money, right? People spend money on ads and make money from those ads.
Right.
Were you trying to think like, okay, who is this most useful for?
So just to set the context, we thought this would reshape how every company operates entirely.
Even from that early stage.
Yeah, from the early stage, because that compression of, oh, it can't really make any sense, isn't it dumb? To all of a sudden, oh, it can brainstorm instantaneously better than anyone else. And when you look at what the trend lines are actually improving, you had a reduced cost of computation, a decrease in latency. So it could actually do this faster. It could handle more context. Like you can give it more information as an input and it would follow those instructions. And then 4, as the models get bigger, they get more accurate because they have more kind of knowledge that they can not retrieve out of it, but it's just more accurate overall. So when you project all those out and going, oh, okay, this is like a year away from being totally transformational to business. Let's build for that. Like what do we actually need to go do now to get ready for that stage?
So then you changed the name from it, like tagline. You had all these different projects, and then you settled on Copy.ai. How did you land on that?
All right, we got two ways that you do it. One's like, all right, what are people actually doing with taglines? And they're not just doing taglines; they're doing like headers for their H1s, H2s on their website. They're using it for email subject lines. They were using it a lot of different ways, but loosely all around the copywriting category.
And you know this because you're asking people, or you just see what they're doing?
Yeah, both. You can just see how people use the product and talk to your users and customers. And so we're like, okay, that makes sense. There is no copywriting app. And if you look at copywriting formulas and principles, so kind of like a set of instructions, and they're not too long, so you could actually just give those instructions to the computer and have it start to riff on those for you. And so customers found that pretty valuable and pretty useful. So we just built a whole series of tools around copywriting. And then we were looking for like copywriting domains. This is my favorite part of starting this, like just going and buying domains, but it's like copywriting.
That's the fun part.
It's like copywritingninja.com. And you're like, whoa, Copy Pro or whatever. I don't know. Like most of the stuff's already taken anyway. Like copywritingcourse.com, I'm sure you went through that.
I went through Great Plains to get it.
Yeah. That's occupied your mind for like decades, right? Just like the name of it. And my co-founder, Chris, he slacks me a message. He's like, hey, check this out. It's Copy.ai. I'm like, that's freaking great. I click on it and it's like, you can pay $5,000 now, or you can rent to own it for $180 a month. And I was like, buy. I just instantly bought it. Like
bought it or rent to own?
Did the rent to own and then we bought it anyway. But it was amazing. I was like, this is clearly it. And what's nice about copy, it's such a core way that people use computers is to copy something and paste something somewhere else. And when we looked at the aggregate impact of AI and generative AI on businesses, a big part of it is just adopting best practices. So in the current state of the world, people write great blog post content. This is how we do X. This is why we do it, But you can't actually translate that instantly to your business. You have to hire someone. They have to read it. Then they have to kind of figure out, okay, well, how do we actually do it? How do we actually configure that into the way that we operate? All of that is going to get turned into an AI process. And so in that world, then you could say, hey, look, I want a world-class sales operation copy. And you just paste it into your workspace or your account. And that's how we're building our product now.
Oh, interesting.
That's way bigger of a deal than just like a piece of copy, right? Like a very tactical snippet of text that might save me, a few minutes, maybe once a couple weeks or a month, Yeah,
dude, I feel this all the time. And one regret about changing the copywriting course, it used to be spelled with K's, copywriting course with K's, to C's, as now it's literal. It's like copywriting course. So it's clearly a course about copywriting. Like there's no doubting. When it was K's, people were always like, why is it spelled with a K? And I always had a great answer. And this has always been my belief since day one. The answer was, copywriting to me is transferring information from my brain to your brain, or my brain to a million brains. And whichever medium does that the fastest, I don't care. Whether it's text, whether it's images, whether it's video in the future, whether it's VR in the future, whether it's Neuralink, whatever way is the fastest is what I want to convey. So if I'm sending an email and it's just best represented with one image and one piece of text, so be it. I'm not going to like write a lot of copy. I'm not one of those people that's like, the pen is the best way. I'm just like, I don't know. Sometimes an image is better. Sometimes a video is better than all of them. And so that was the reason. It's just like, it was so much more than just like writing words on a page. So, and then when I made it C's copywriting course, I was like, damn, it's not cool.
No, I know. You want the meta version, right? Because that's always a bigger picture.
Well, the main thing we have is copywriting course community. And when you spell those with K's, you know, a few years ago, it didn't fly.
No, it still doesn't fly. I'm not
sure. Still doesn't fly. Still doesn't fly. So here's a question I was curious about you.
Yeah.
Your Copy.ai, like I think you had product market fit. It's safe to say, right?
We had it kind of instantly. Yeah. On Twitter. Yeah.
And I was always just like
by the way, Twitter is like the ultimate copywriting test.
How so?
Like if you can't write a good tweet, nothing's going to happen.
Oh, that's a good way. Yeah, I feel like I write more on Twitter now than I write like blog posts. And I'm just like, these are just short blog posts. Yeah. But because I remember seeing it, so like people were just like flocking to your service.
Yeah.
And I think it was almost hard for you to keep up with the demand, which is like Mark Andreessen's definition of
we had really no idea what to do.
So just like how many people were signing up on like a day, or like what's a record or something?
Back then was like, I mean, right out of the gate, when you launch, obviously you're going to have a big spike, right? So we had 2,000.
Not everyone, you did.
Okay, well, okay. Few tips. Number one, if you're going to build something or you want to start a company, get on Twitter, follow people that are doing that, and they will inspire you to build something and launch. So that's how it worked for us. Each time you launch something, you need to, first of all, engage with people on Twitter. That's very important. They're humans. And the people that you see engaging on it, that's 1 out of like 1,000 people who actually saw your post, which is mind blowing. Like it's almost impossible to imagine that physically. You're in an auditorium, 1,000 people are looking at you, and then one guy is like replying, right? The scale of it's way beyond anything that you can easily imagine. And then once you do that, you just start adding value to the conversations. And as you do that, people will start to follow you. And then when you do these launches, you just DM everybody that follows you. Hey, we'd love, your support. We're launching this. We're really excited about it. That's it. So that starts to build this little bit of a flywheel and feedback loop. And then when you go the rapid MVP path like we did, now we're launching all the time. People are getting excited. Right. So by the time we launch the 5th thing, we're just like doubling down on what worked with taglines. We got like 2,000 people to sign up in the first 2 days. So the real question for us was, is this a blip or is there any value here? And from a marketing standpoint, you don't really know until you can see like, okay, is there any word of mouth component? How do you actually go build that acquisition engine, at least to bring people in? And so, like 10 days later, we were still getting like 250 signups a day organically, which is great. Like that's awesome. That's more than enough to start doing some experimentation.
That's paying customers.
No, just people using the product. You just want people to use the product. And so for us, that was like a moment. Okay, we actually have something here. This isn't just like a side hustle, but there is actually some value that's being generated from the platform. And we have kind of de-risked some of the acquisition, which is the biggest killer of startups, is no one cares what you built.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, also your product was stunning at the time. Now we have ChatGPT and stuff like that. It's kind of like, it's hard to understand.
Right.
But at the time, I remember I do these office hours in our copywriting course and we go through, and I was just like, yeah, check out this tool, Copy.ai. If you want to brainstorm headlines, you just put what you want in there and this tool will make like 20 of the headlines. Yeah. And people were like, wait. What?
Yeah.
Like no one had ever seen something like that in history.
No,
like in the history of humans.
Yeah.
People are just like, wait, what just happened? Like, it's like a showstopper moment.
Yeah.
From that on, the office hours would all be about like AI.
We still get people thinking that it's just looking up something on the internet and copying it and putting it back in the window for the user. I'm like, no, it's actually generating. They're like, what do you mean generating? And that's, it's not the easiest thing to explain to your average user.
So you had something that like people just never seen before.
They had never seen it. Yeah. And the first generation where you didn't have the instruction following model yet, you couldn't just tell it what you want. You had to use a tool. The tools don't quite fit like exactly what somebody wants. You'd have to go browse a tool and figure out, okay, well, is this like a paragraph generator? Or like, what do I actually need? Which tool do I need to get the job done?
So I remember we had a conversation about SEO, and I said our top stuff is generators. And basically the generators was me working with the developer to like make like, you put like verb, gender, whatever. And then like you put it, it's all like manually done, right? So you make this generator, but it's just a dumb piece of code following HTML and JavaScript. Your tools that you made were like AI creating the thing anew for you each time.
Yeah.
And like, I know your SEO just like freaking
we did go
skyrocket.
Yeah, we did. We went the free tool route. We like made some of those free.
But you're making free tools no one had ever seen.
Nobody ever had before.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So
and
you're in a kind of
it.
Well, yeah, but you're also in a little bit of a chicken or the egg problem because no one knows to search for it. So it's hard to build an SEO tool that no one is even thinking about too. Like if you look at business name generator, like Shopify was pretty early on that, and they owned a bunch of those. HubSpot owned a bunch.
So then Copy.ai, I know at its peak tool, it was like 75 different tools. So the original use case was like, okay, subject line generator.
Yeah.
And then to make a blog post generator, or I remember you made like an ADA generator. I would always use the ADA formula with everyone. And you made like an ADA generator. But you have to like tool each one a little bit different.
We do.
Like, it wasn't like an omni tool like it is now.
Very hard. Yeah.
And so you just started adding tools after tools.
You had to prompt engineer, a diverse set of ADA examples that don't cross conflict from a word or a theme basis. So it's just a pattern recognizer. So if your examples, like, hey, here are examples. If they're patterned in different ways, you want to eliminate that. So it's a lot of. So it's a lot of prompt engineering just to get something to be like pretty good and decent. And that was
that's
like
interesting. So whenever you're trying to make an ADA generator, at least back then, you were giving it just a bunch of ADA examples, like
high quality ADA examples.
So you were going across the internet, cleaning them up for text entry,
sometimes writing them. Yeah, sometimes writing.
Oh man,
yeah.
So there's a lot more work.
There's a lot more work. Yeah.
Okay. So then you just kept adding and adding tools. Yeah. Like I said, I think you had 75 at the peak.
Yeah. And then guess what? Users complain about
what?
I can't find the tool.
Can't find the tool. Yeah. Too many tools.
Yeah.
Classic.
Yeah.
Classic.
Right. And then you're like, well, what if we create like a meta search where you could like search for the tool, right? And then it's like we're kind of back at square one. At that point, it's just not.
So then what were the most commonly used tools at that time during peak tool time?
Yeah, big ones were like paragraph generator, because that was kind of the biggest block of text that you could do.
Interesting.
It may have it work. And so a lot of people would build like an outline and then throw the outline as the input and then actually generate like a high quality paragraph. And then Instagram captions, people ate that up. Because,
oh, really?
Yeah, a lot of people have to write, like an Instagram post every week or more every day sometimes for brands and, businesses.
I have a theory. I mean, obviously we do copywriting, so we see a lot of versions of it. I'd say the thing that AI has mostly replaced, and thank God, because I hate doing it, is supporting content. And what I mean by that is, let's say we upload this video to YouTube.
Right.
Now you got to write a description.
Yeah.
Now you got to write tags. Now, God forbid, you have to go and do those tags, like the time tags, the timestamps.
Yeah.
That takes forever.
Yeah.
And instead, the AI could just do it right away. It's 85% good,
but it
does
better.
Instantly.
Yeah, it'll get better.
It'll eventually be 95, 100% good. And so I feel like those types of like low level things that you didn't want to do, AI is just really good at.
Yeah.
And it's so fascinating.
Yeah. It gets kind of embedded into the whatever applications you're using.
Yeah. So, okay. So in terms
Can I say one thing real quick? It is fun to see like, everybody's like, oh, AI can't do this perfectly or they can't do that perfectly. But then you look at like the job level that people do, like a lot of times it's not great.
Yeah.
And so what was actually cool is when you're building tools, you can get that feedback in real time if people find it valuable or helpful. and you can kind of figure out, well, what is the actual level that is helpful and useful? It's very different levels for different users.
Mm-hmm.
And so, as you can imagine, professional copywriters, they're like, this isn't that great. And then everybody else is like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
It's just like that level of standard. I think with copywriting, we think of, okay, this is going on the homepage of some high volume website, and every word is like super critical to it. But that's just like a very small percentage of total content and copy that needs to get created.
I would say that a very lucrative part of copywriting was these mid-level people that needed to write mid-level copy to other mid-level positions. Like it didn't have to be the best thing in the world. It didn't have to be the most engaging. They were just trying to write a memo to a company. They were just trying to write, like you said, an Instagram caption for an oil change place in Milwaukee. It didn't have to be the craziest thing in the world. Right. And so that's when people are like, well, it's not better. A human could still write better. Right. I'm like, yeah, but you don't understand how much people need this, that like average people need this. You're talking about elite copywriting or entertainment. Like there's this whole world below that where now those people can just do it.
Right.
Yeah. So let's talk about copywriters. Copywriters in my, like, especially like when I think of like old school copywriters, seem to be like a salty bunch sometimes. And it's almost like this kind of like the computer versus the human thing. Did you ever encounter those people?
We didn't really sell a lot to copywriters.
Really?
No. Because we looked at if you look at the market, there are like 15,000 copywriters. And you're talking about AI computing, it's going to impact every business and everything that people do. This is not like, it's not even in the same market really.
Really?
No. Because if you look at all the 100x size the market outside of copywriting, even just in marketing alone, copywriting is just one element, right, of a marketer's job. They're having to write a lot of things anyway. For the people that are really good with words, they make excellent prompt engineers. They understand how every single word impacts what the model is going to do. So we have found value in, copywriters internally for our company as these prompt engineers.
But it's funny if you follow like the Reddit copywriting thread. And I know it's Reddit, so there's going to be some of that. But it's just like everything's about like AI. Will this be gone? Is this taking our jobs? What's your thought on that for like those types of copywriters?
I think for every person's job is like a kind of like a collection of tasks, right? And as computers get more powerful, they can do more of those tasks. So your job evolves to other things. I can't speak for copywriting in general, but I know a lot of like big agencies, they just view everything as a cost center to them. And so anything inside of that cost center that they feel like they can replicate without a customer complaining or a client complaining, they're probably going to do it. So, overall, I mean, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I have a blog post drafted out called "Does Everyone Just Become a Plumber?"
No, that's the answer to that. So I can tell you, the answer to that's no.
Why do you say that?
We'll have plumber robots, but that's not why exactly. That's not why exactly. I think everybody is going to become a creator. I think all of these tools makes it so easy to get something going. And so if you have an idea or you have a vision of what you want, the path to getting there is so much shorter. And every single tool that comes out, all the AI tools, like, oh, I need a website. It's like same day you have a website with an email account. And to give you an example, my daughter, she's 9. She's like, Dad, I want to shop. I want to sell stuff online. I'm like, cool. She's a great painter. I'm like, okay, let's get this set up. And I'm thinking, man, it's going to take forever to do this. We get on Namecheap. I grab a domain. She wants to call it artshopkids.com. We get the domain name. It's like $6. Then we go to Shopify. I just use the app. So on my phone, it's like $60 for a full year starter plan or whatever. From the app, you can take photos of the product and list it and put the pricing in there. And in 26 minutes, she has, like, you can go on this website. She has her first item listed. The store is live. It's in 26 minutes. She's an entrepreneur now. So the world's changed, and I think, education and schooling and none of that stuff is relevant at all. YouTube's the most relevant, but even then, like, it's hard to get that 101 content through because everybody wants to niche down into more advanced topics. But like at simplistic level, do you have a phone? Do you know to like get the domain name and go to Shopify? If you know those 3 things, did you know it only takes 26 minutes, right? Time to value is really short. And then once I told her the site was live, she's like, cool. Like, how many people are on the website? And I was like, nobody. She's like, we need to run some ads. That's what she said. Right. So now her brain's thinking, how do I get people to go to it? That's where her brain's going to be going. And that's great.
Yeah. Cause in our era, we'd be on day 4 and we're talking about like, so what's a DNS now? What is
it? Was bad.
What's an SSL certificate?
It was bad, man.
Yeah. How do you get a server? Like a physical server in the mountains somewhere?
I was in the 7th grade. I'm like, I'm gonna learn how to code because this is like 2000. And you had the first big tech wave came through. I'm like, okay, computer engineering, that's the thing. It's like, cool, I get a C++ book. It's 700 pages. Open the first page. It starts talking about objects and modules. And I'm like, I don't know what this is. And then if you wanted to build like your own server, you need Apache and there's like a whole thing. It was too much effort to do any of that. So yeah, and I was using like Microsoft Front Page and Dreamweaver to like build these websites and how do you style it all. And Shopify is like, hey, look, everything's mostly the same. We'll just give you like a template that's ready to go out of the box. And you don't need to mess around with like the server, the payment system, like any of that stuff.
Yeah.
It's all gone. Then you just focus on like, okay, well, what's the business problem? Business problem is
super interesting.
What's the product? And then how do we go find people that need that? Like what pain point is that solving for people?
I was in college, I was in like an investment entrepreneurial group.
Yeah.
And there was 200 people in it. It was me and one other guy, and the other guy worked for his dad. And I was the only one that had a business. And the reason was I was reasonably technical, right? I knew how to use Dreamweaver. I knew how to use Front Page. I could do basic HTML. I knew enough about the web that I could actually make a web page, which back then was very, very difficult. And you literally needed like a real server, and you need to get had a bank account to accept payments and then like link it. And all these processes took forever. And so the cost to entry for an entrepreneurial kid was very high. In fact, potentially completely impossible for most people. I was just lucky. And now you go to an entrepreneurial club, every single one of these kids has tried something. They started in a Shopify store. They started trying to like resell crap on eBay, whatever. They've all tried something because it's like all you need is a phone and the tools are there to do it. Right. And so I assume the next generation will just be like, even this 26 minutes of startup time and like you having to pay for her $60 Shopify. I assume all that will just be erased.
Yeah.
In the near future, all those things that she had to do to get to that point, that will be 26 seconds instead of 26 minutes.
Yeah, so
not even.
So she's in phase 1. Phase 2, she wants to list art of other kids. And then as a parent, I'm like, man, I know kids like they produce a lot of art that may not make it. You know what I mean? Like it goes out to the trash can or something at some point. It's just so much art that they're creating like at school. But she wanted to make it, affordable art. And then I asked her, I'm like, okay, well, like how much, if you sold like your friend's painting for like $20, like how much of that should go to you? And she's like, half. She knows like take rates, you know? And I didn't have to tell her what a take rate was. She knew what it was.
And did
she has this instinct.
Did she use AI in any of this process?
I did to write the product descriptions. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because I was like, there's a painting. She's like, I'm like, what's it called? It was like, looked like a sunset. She's like, it's called Sunset. I'm like, we gotta do better than that, you know? So yeah, we had generate, different things, title, like the descriptions are great, title's great.
And I imagine what would happen, like what we've already seen with.
But the real created thing was the painting. Like that's what we've got. We've got a painting, and we have somebody that did it, and that's an original piece of art. Right?
That gets me down to like, it sounds like a lot of basically, I think whatever the economy, especially in tech, is like doing things that other people can't do. So it might have been writing product descriptions. It might have been making a headline for a painting that you had. And now that part is, I don't want to say solved, but damn near solved, and probably will be in a very short amount of time. It's just like the actual important thing moves. So it used to be being able to write a headline and enter it into WordPress was a valuable skill.
Your competitive
now
advantage.
You're like, that's not that unique anymore. And honestly, the computer's just going to keep getting better and our brains will keep staying the same. Right. So what is the end what's the process that you're trying to sell? So like your daughter is trying to sell like her creative paintings.
Yeah.
I don't know. How should people, is there a way that people should rethink about it? Because a lot of people's jobs are going to be completely morphed in the next 5-10 years.
Yeah.
Completely.
Shorter than that. Yeah.
Probably. I'm saying 5 to 10 years based on my previous
I think
for internet.
I think for everybody, everybody should be using AI tools, and try to be as close to the forefront of that.
Mm-hmm.
It's really critical.
So let's talk about this. So Copy.ai started off of all these little tools, then combined into one big mega tool.
One mega tool, yeah.
One big mega tool.
Yeah.
Then exactly 1 year ago and 9 days from right now, I think, it was ChatGPT's first birthday.
Oh, yeah.
ChatGPT was released into the world, which is arguably, I mean, by all definitions from the past 20 years, a full AGI. Maybe not full AGI. It's what we would have thought is like a complete artificial intelligence just a few years ago. Just 2 years ago, we would have been like, this is clearly artificial intelligence.
Two reasons why. One was the interaction was natural for the user.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like time to value is 0 seconds. So that experience was incredible. The breadth of things that it could do was also incredible. You ask it for like simple scripts of code to do something like, I was like, hey, build a, scraper code to go scrape a website and return like the header text.
Mm-hmm.
It just spit it out, formatted, like paste it into, I have like a Replit account and paste it in there, run it. I'm like, does this even work? And then boom, it just worked. And I'm like, okay, we have solved a lot of problems here with this model. It's like a very special moment.
Yeah.
To be able to see that, right?
It almost eliminated all the, maybe not right away, but now, especially with GPT-4 and beyond, it's just like, instead of saying like, to make a specific tool for an email generator.
Yeah, you don't really need it.
You don't need it at all.
You can do it to make it better.
Yeah.
You can always add tooling to be more specific because the way that they train the general purpose model isn't that, it's not that good for any given task, but it's good for the average task. It's good enough for the average task.
Yeah. So you just have this general purpose tool. And it's the first thing that I've seen every walk of life use. I showed my mom how to use it. I've shown like older people in our community how to use it. And it's simple.
Yeah.
And then one of the most shocking ones to me was, it was nothing different, but it's just the way we talk to it. So on iOS, you can enable the voice feature.
Yeah.
You just talk to ChatGPT and it responds back to you.
Yeah.
And you could modify what it tells you too. You could tell it to stop and tell you to in a funnier way, whatever. And it's just so natural for people that this is the first time I'm seeing everyone just use AI just as out of the box, just like that.
I think the craziest part is how general purpose it is too. I mean, we're used to like companies making innovations and getting it to that moment. And then like, that's the company that's going to own that tech.
Mm-hmm.
And in this case, that's not the case at all. It's like Google Google's got a new set of models coming out called Gemini.
Mm-hmm.
Those could be better. And then instantly you're like, oh, ChatGPT is the best. Oh, wait, Bard app or whatever app you want to use for that. Suddenly that's the best. And so I think, we're conditioned to one company owning stuff. And in the back of my mind, I'm always like, what? Apple's going to win this. They own the hardware, right?
Yeah.
And they can embed these models and shrink them and put them on the phone. And at that point, you're not even communicating with the internet. Really, you're just communicating through the phone.
That's been a bit surprising. I remember with when I was young in college and like on the forefront of tech, it seemed like the smaller companies were actually capturing a lot more of the value than the bigger companies. The bigger companies are slow and offline, and they're like, retail's always going to win.
Right.
And smaller companies were like, yeah, we can sell shoes online. It's not a big deal. And they were just like, it'll never work. And then those companies just took over. Yeah. It seems what's happening now is big companies are moving really fast on this, because all they got to do is tell their developers to implement a few little API calls and bam, you got AI integrated into your already existing product.
Right.
And those big companies already have the contracts, they already have the customers, they already solving a problem, and now you insert AI and it just does it way better.
Right.
It's almost like the big companies have captured a predominant amount of the value, as far as I can tell. Is that what you're
From
seeing?
the market cap, yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
So where have you seen like smaller companies kind of sneak in here?
It's a good question. So in the, in like the business world and in startups and venture capital, you tend to have cycles. You have very definite cycles. And usually when there's a new technology, it takes about 2 years for like the big incumbent players to like actually ship something.
Mm-hmm.
And so when GPT-3 launched, I kind of set a 2-year clock. I'm like, okay, this is how much time we have to go build brand awareness and distribution that we're going to need, right? And then, like you said, okay, once the model gets good enough, they can just bolt it on as a feature, right? And be about their merry way. So we're now in the incumbents adding AI functionality as a bolt-on to their products. And the way that that's largely manifested is in some cases, their search functionality got a little bit better. And then the second one that's more apparent to the user is like these Copilot additions where you can chat with information or chat with the system. So
you're talking about like a law document or a contract.
Yeah.
You'd be like, when does this clause expire or whatever?
Yeah, things like that. And Microsoft already has like their package of, AI Copilot that they're going to be selling per user per month against all of their customer base, right? And kind of bundling enterprise kind of chat GPT against that. Now, is that predictable? Yeah. This is like super predictable. So when you're a startup and you're like, all right, where's the white space here? In the tech world, usually it's you have a new technology that comes out, everybody just bolts it on. And then the question is, well, what if you built from the ground up, purpose built around the tech? What could you enable? And then how do you build something that no one else can compete with? Because their architecture is built for a bygone era. And so that's the approach we've taken, mostly out of necessity. Again, like you're not coming in with a $2 trillion market cap and you're like, okay, how do we add another, I think $30 a month per user, like across 100 million users? That's a lot of money for Microsoft in their pocket, right?
Well, also if they implement a little Copilot where you can chat with your docs,
right?
Well, they already have all your docs. They got all the company docs already. So it just I would rather wait long enough to just use that than move to a new company, right?
Right. For most businesses, they would need a really compelling reason to move. And so you then as a company and as a founder, you need like a more compelling vision of the future, right? And so the easiest thing to do, and this is what I always encourage founders to do, is just say that the big company and what they're going to do is just dumb. Right? It's just dumb. And usually bolting on the thing to the other thing, that whole thing still doesn't make sense. It's still like a broken process. So if you think about docs and like we have all this information, the way that the copilots are set up, you as a user still have to like initiate and trigger something to happen. So when you take Thanksgiving off, your AI took Thanksgiving off, which is dumb. Right? It's just dumb. It doesn't even make sense when we talk about it that way. I think it's very easy to get attached to the market idea. Oh, Microsoft's big or Google's big. But Google, I mean, they just faked the whole product demo, right? In a very public way. So they're not in a good spot right now. Microsoft, they can coast probably for like 3 decades and be fine. But even then, they have this this agreement in place with OpenAI. They got put in an awkward spot with the turmoil there, and the board turmoil, right? And because it's not like the underlying models haven't created moats yet for anybody where you can just pull them out, rip and replace, and plug and play any of the models. It's still uncertain who's going to win that race, and that's a race to spend like $100 billion. Which means startup is never really going to be playing in that anyway. Like the amount of capital needed to operate these GPU farms, it's too much. So where we looked at it, we're like, okay, do I really want to bolt on a chat thing that is unlikely to get used that much? Because the use case of like chatting with a document for most people isn't really that significant. It's just like another kind of chat, like a search use case. It's not transformational to business. So what we figured out was, if you take the software a person's using plus what they're trying to do with it, can you operationalize that entire thing inside of one automation workflow? So can you do the entire process beginning to end? And the answer to that's yes. So when you look at the things that people do inside these human in the loop workflows, a lot of it's gathering information, which you can either push into this process, or you can generate a query, like a search query, to go query it and bring it in. And then once you have that, then you have like the business logic. Well, what do we do with this information? How are we going to transform it? What should an output look like? All of that stuff's just prompts. So that's a set of instructions. And then where does it need to go? So once we turn it into this like piece, is it formatted correctly? And let's push it out somewhere else. So those flows now, what's interesting about those flows, you can replicate them across every company. Once you build the flow, you do that process infinitely at a minuscule cost, and it's infinitely scalable.
Do you have any real world examples of like that implemented?
Yeah, so you can do it really for anything. In marketing, you got a lot of use cases. SEO, a lot of use cases. One example, we look at like content production from competitors or trending keywords. And so what we do is we can just build these tools that go scrape the SERP in real time. And we can just trigger that periodically to run. And then when new things pop up, you can figure out, well, what are the keywords that they're trying to target for? Are those keywords valuable or not? And you can just build this flow that says, okay, now let's go create our own content based on our own set of information that we've got that does satisfy that search intent. And so you can actually replicate that entire process in a set of these flows.
Interesting. I mean,
that's one use case, but it's really just data. Everything is just data, some logic, and then a place for that data to move to.
Yeah. When you're saying SEO, I was trying to think about it. And I was like, yeah, what we would do with clients is you basically like take some of the top things that you do a report. So the AI can now do this stuff. Pull a report. Where are we doing really well? If you're number one, you're already number one. You don't need to do anything. But if you're number 5, it's just like, okay, what's the difference between my article and the 4 above me?
You know what it is? It's like what, 4x or something? In terms of clicks, it's big.
Yeah, and that's big. A massive difference. So if you're already up there, it's just like, okay, what am I missing? And you can use tools like Ahrefs and different things.
We do this if you're on like page 2. You want to move to page 1. That's a big.
And usually it's something like you're missing a couple of keywords and a section about it. And now, well, guess what? There's tools out there that could just create that instantly, update that headline, say, look, updated 2023, whatever.
You can do that. And even like, I mean, you've seen the Google Search Console data. It's like 10,000 of rows of information, right?
Well, let me ask you this question.
Yeah.
You're uniquely suited for it. So let's say SEO. Okay. So SEO was this game of like, who could spend the most amount of time updating their content,
right?
And not be
That's not a good use of our time, right?
It was such a boring thing. I don't even do it today anymore because like the value of SEO is like a little bit declining in my opinion. So, okay. But now everyone's got, let's say, this Copy.ai workflow that they could just push and it just constantly updates SEO.
Right.
And so it's just this battle of the robots constantly doing it. So there's still going to be like a few winners. It's a little bit of a zero-sum game. In the search engine world, there's only one top of the page.
Sure.
And so it's going to be like a couple of it's going to be like HubSpot and some larger companies just fighting out basically for that number one result. I'm going to be buried.
Right.
So what can people do differently now that that's almost like a solved game?
I'd say it's not quite solved yet. It is that's the gamified version of SEO, but the more valuable one is where you're bringing that new information to the table, right? And that's one of the great things about podcasts. You can take the podcast, get the transcript, chunk it out into topics, generate articles on each of those topics based on the pod. This is something we do already We're doing this with transcripts. Internally, it works phenomenally well.
Can you explain a little?
You have a transcript, right?
Let's say this video.
Yeah,
what's going to happen?
We'll do it. It literally says the input to this workflow is the entire text of the entire transcript. And then we built a prompt that extracts out different topics of it. Then we have a workflow that grabs the topic and that full transcript and it builds the outline for you. Then we're like, okay, let's take the outline and actually build the content. It builds the content. It's accurate against the transcript. So it's not going to make stuff up. And then from there, you're like, okay, great. Now we have the article. Let's generate the title from the article. And then it does that. Each of those steps is like, it could be a lot of steps in there. There could be a lot of logic. All that stuff is now contained so that you could just rinse and repeat this over and over again.
That's really, I'm glad you gave me a real world example that really set it in concrete. Because
I'll tell you like the way that customers want to use that. A lot of times they'll have like sales calls or they'll have customer support calls where user or the customer, they have questions around use cases or like how to get it to do something. And somebody's answering those questions in real time, right? And actually get that to turn into content historically it's kind of hard. You'd need a marketer, they need to get on like a content calendar or whatever. But all that information is actually contained in the transcript. So you can just route it now into these content building workflows. And it requires very minimal editing on top because all the information is in there.
I really love the thing you said, net new information.
That's absolutely critical. Yeah.
That's going to be what people are going to be searching for now.
That's what Google's tried to incentivize for
with their EAT formula. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like entertaining, educational, whatever it means. Yeah.
Well, yeah. Right. And then even for the way that the entire internet works is it's a content flywheel. The entire internet's a content flywheel. You upload stuff, right? That puts it into this big pool of information. Google sifts all that through and allows you to retrieve what's relevant, right, in real time. So over time, they incentivize you to create more content and share more insights, right, with SEO and driving traffic. So that's the monetization model inside this content flywheel. Now you stuck a kind of piece in between that massive index, the corpus of information and documents, which is the large language model. So now all that content, all that information is like compressed into this large language model. And then you can deploy that compressed model everywhere in every business process. And so in the old days, you had to go look up something on the internet, right? Learn about it, and then come back and try to do a task. Now you can just embed the internet into the task process itself. This was what I got probably the most excited about when we started in 2020, because this accelerates like the entire content flywheel of the internet. Makes it way easier for people to publish things. So in this transcript world, you could just have calls all day long. And it's just spitting out content on the back end.
Well,
and it's all new. It's not new. It's not like you're just regurgitating or spitting back out stuff. And what's happening is when we upload, we're describing how the world works to these models now, right? You're kind of taking snapshots of the way people interact. We're uploading video, we're uploading photos. That is trying to, that's information that these models need to understand how the world works. And that's the purpose of those models.
Interesting. Yeah, it's kind of funny as you're saying that. It's like, this is the net new. This conversation is a thing of bouncing ideas, figuring out stuff. I'm personally learning from it. But then after this, there's a whole thing going on of editors and stuff like that send me the video. I send it to my guys.
That's not the future. I think we can kind of see the pieces coming together around just operationally what needs to happen to make that, way more streamlined.
So we record this and the AI just runs with it. It distributes it. It cuts up all the clips. It makes the clips interesting. It gives a description for each clip, where to click after the clip, how to go to the next one. Right now, that's all kind of like under the support of a human eye, which is a lot of time and money. And honestly, jobs that are like not fun.
It's just not a good use of time. Like the best use of time would be just having conversations with people constantly. That's been my thinking.
Interesting.
So if I'm running a company, it's probably just having 16 customer calls a day, just stack them up.
Yeah.
And then I don't have to even think about where the information needs to go. It all flows into the system. The system has the rules about what types of information need to route to who on the team. We're going to have that system set up in the next few weeks internally.
So like, where does this all, so you said like how people should get started with AI, probably just using it all the time, just trying to use it a bunch.
There are two things. Number one, use it all the time. Number two, you have to like recenter yourself and really understand what you want to do personally.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that people don't do enough of. They don't really, a lot of people aren't thinking right now. They're just scrolling through the feed constantly, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's not how we need to live our lives. The feed, ideally the feed just goes away and we just hang out.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that's a way better future than the feed gets more addictive because you have more content, more opportunities in the neural net to match content that's going to resonate a part of your brain better. I don't think that's a good idea. So I sent you a present.
Mm-hmm.
Purpose of that present, this is a typewriter, is for you to actually not be distracted by technology and like start to try to communicate your own thoughts to yourself, like very consciously. And I found that to be quite therapeutic. I mean, I just like smash out stuff all the time now on my typewriter. And it's given me a much firmer foundation for like things that I want to do. Even my own thoughts, like if you've had thoughts that other people aren't validating or aren't popular, like you don't just want to get rid of those. You want to actually make those very clear to yourself, what it is and why.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think you have to pair both of those together. Like if my daughter says, well, the AI can do it, I don't need to learn anything, right? I don't think that is going to you're not going to end up in a good spot, right? Because the pace of change would encourage that viewpoint, right? Like, why should I learn anything if a computer is going to learn how to do it?
But that is a valid question.
Right.
I feel,
yeah. So to me, that's a very core question we need to be discussing. And I don't think it's like for me personally, I would just I'd hedge that and say that's like, no, you still need to learn something. But it's a question that I think would play into a lot of the cultural memes, especially around like anti-work stuff. Like you've seen this Reddit subreddit trend. I'm like, is this China that's pushing this narrative on Americans? Like, I have no idea where this narrative comes from, but it's toxic to your culture. So I'm wondering, I'm on the lookout for any of these narratives that are very toxic to culture and hard work. Because I know, at least for me, I found a lot of value personally in hard work and accomplishing things and feeling like I'm learning. I think that's important regardless of what computers can do. So when you have a vision of what you want, let's say I want to get over here and a computer comes along, it should just help me get there faster. So this should be a tailwind. And so if you feel like computers getting smarter, faster, whatever, are a threat, I would recommend you think about how to reposition what you want in such a way that it's a tailwind for you that helps you get what you want.
Well, let's travel back 20 years or so. I was graduating high school, going to college. Hundreds of thousands of people, maybe millions, I don't know, worked with newspapers. Like the newspaper got delivered every day and you read it. Like you physically read this thing that someone printed with metal onto ink, and then a dude drove it to your house at 5:30 in the morning. That was a real thing. That's how everyone got their news in the world.
It is pretty cool. It's like if you printed the internet.
It is stunning that it actually worked. Yeah.
Right.
And then it's just like at that time, becoming like a journalist was like this really hard thing because people were still to some degree typing on typewriters. Computers were already kind of the norm, but like not really the internet at the moment. And so every single job that I've seen has been impacted by the internet within 20 years.
Right.
And now that we're mostly digital, those changes are going to take place at a different clock speed,
A little
probably
bit faster, yeah.
probably half each time. And it'll just get faster and faster and
Right.
faster. So even if you are a plumber, the way I hired a plumber to install a cool new Japanese toilet. And where did I find him? On the internet.
Right.
How did I meet him? Through a chat app.
Plumbers have been doing really well. I don't know if you paid the bill yet, but they're not cheap.
But this is why I wrote a blog post draft called like, does everyone become a plumber? Because in the end, all the stuff we're doing with tech, like I'm writing stuff for people, it's just like at some point, if this gets replaced by a computer could do it really well, I should be doing something that a computer can't do. I should be in that frame where a computer can't. And right now, a computer can't really move this from here to there that well.
Yeah.
At least not a general robot. We're still a little bit away from robot.
No, we're not that far.
At some point, it'll be.
No, we're not that far.
Well, here's the thing. My thesis is like short term, medium term, and long term. And at the point where how do I preserve myself? How do I make money? How do I stay ahead of all this?
Right.
In the long run,
Right.
I cannot. I've tried. Unless we all bomb ourselves back to the Stone Age and then I'm dead before then.
No, we don't want to do that either.
I don't see a world where we don't all become robots.
It's an interesting question.
But I almost don't see any way that doesn't happen. And for us, I think that seems scary. But I try to position myself 50 years in the future as a robot. And I look back on the barbaric times of me and Paul sitting in a room together, having to breathe oxygen that's at the perfect level so we don't die. You flew on a big metal bird over here to get here.
So dumb.
Yeah, you went through all the. It's like all these things. If I hit you in the face, it'll hurt you.
Yeah,
a robot would be like, hit me in the face all you want. It doesn't matter. It's no big. It's fun.
No, I'm not a big robot fan.
But we all become robots eventually, right? Like we are already partially a robot. If someone's watching this, they are watching us on a robot. We're being recorded by a robot. This is a robot. My phone has a robot.
I mean, if your knee goes bad and you get an implant, it's like metal. That's pretty dope, you know?
So, I mean, that's why I think being robots would be better.
We're already biomechanical in many ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I don't think it would be better. Like, again, I think you need a very concrete definition of what you want.
Well, what if
you value?
I've thought about this a a lot too.
I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
You mentioned the plumbers, and my brain goes in a million different directions. One of which is as people, at least in the U.S., have gotten wealthier, the size of our houses have gotten bigger over time. Mm-hmm. So I think in like 1950, the average size of the house was like 1,200 square feet. Now it's like 3,000 of new ones. And so I'm like, okay, if we get so incredibly wealthy from all this AI and computation, like how big is the house going to get? You know? And I'm like, okay, a 20,000 square foot house. And I'm like, how many toilets is that? You know? So you're talking about the plumber still having a job, right? I'm like, if the house just continues to grow like at that same clip, but everybody's in a freaking palace. You've seen these houses, right? Yeah. Everybody is like on Zillow, like browsing these insane houses. So we are wealthier. We don't feel any better. We probably even feel worse. And so that's why it's really important for everybody to like be very mindful and conscious of, okay, even if we get this economic growth on paper, is life better or not? And I would argue for most people, it doesn't seem like it's getting better for them. Their life's not getting better. Like the phone becomes more addictive because of the content, amount of content's growing. The algorithms get better. Like
but if you could, but there is an argument that like if we're just aliens looking at humans and we were just objective about like what's better, you'd say like, are they having more happy experiences than sad experiences? And for the most part, like people aren't dying all over the streets.
Yeah.
You know, like we don't think like looking at a mountain causes you to die or something.
That's a good question. I don't know. I think timescales are different. Like we're still biologically wired, right? And now we're introduced to phones that are 6 inches from our face that are programmed to like get us to react in certain ways. I don't think the human brain can even function against that. I don't think there are enough blockers against that. So I think that's an issue.
Yeah, I think long time frame, I'm talking 100 years. We're fully digital, basically, is the way I see it.
Digital species.
Yeah. Like, now you could always do this thing where a time scale, it's like, oh, the heat death of the universe, everything's going to die in 10 billion years. Okay, fine. That's so far away. We do have current time frame problems first. So I try to divide it into 3 different parts. The very long term, let's say we become like all robots and we're all just somewhere in a server.
Can I say something real quick?
Yeah.
Everybody's scenario mapping always maps to some movie.
Yeah.
But that to me is like, that's not the best thing.
Well, I think thinking about it in 100 years is a hypothetical thing, right? I probably
but it's
won't
always
be around.
like the first, like
No.
either where it's like whatever. It's like the Matrix, right? Like that's a very common one. You know, like just people mentally mapping to movies they're all very much like horror movies. I feel like.
I don't personally think they're all. I think obviously if you have a movie, you have to make it a horror movie because it's
right?
not interesting if it's just all nice.
Let me ask you this: like, you let's say you and all your friends took the day off, and you're all going to hang out together. What are you doing?
Going ATVing, going shoot some guns, and hanging out, chit chatting.
That's the fucking future.
Yeah, and so that's
it's
what I'm
not
saying.
the Matrix. We watched the Matrix,
but I do think that if you look at
day off, I swear to you, is the fucking future. And if you told people, hey, we don't need you to work anymore, so you've got the day off, like, you know, for a long time, you're fucking hang out. We could do it.
Well, I think it's moving more and more towards that. Most of the people we know, that's kind of their life, right?
Do they like it?
I think so.
Yeah, they fucking love it. So I wouldn't worry too much about like
they're not giving it up. Let's just say that.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry too much about like these overly pessimistic versions of the future. I think the things that make us happy are really straightforward. I think probably mortality, obviously, an A+ problem for individuals, right? Which I think we'll probably solve.
So okay, so you have kids. What are you training them to do so that they would be best set up in their future? What are the skills that you're instilling?
Entrepreneurship. That's pretty key. And at a younger age, I think from what I could tell, most successful people, they did something before they graduated high school, whether that was like newspaper, like throwing newspapers in the old days, building websites, selling candy, something. Just get that brain working around how do I take my resources and use that to help somebody else in a way that I get more resources back, and just start to think and get those gears moving. Because I don't know what's happened in like colleges, for example, but none of the people that taught any of the courses have ever created any businesses. So like you're not ever going to learn anything from them at all. And all that stuff, that's old. And ChatGPT to me was a moment to go, okay, we don't need like half the universities anymore. And so we just don't have those conversations outside of watching like Peter Thiel videos on YouTube, like, you know, 10 years ago talking about this. So like, it's just a matter of time before that people actually act on that information. And so right now for kids, like you need to have like high moral and ethical standards, period. So that's something you cannot, you know, you have to educate and teach around that. 2 is like curiosity. That's really key. 3 is physical activity. Got to have physical activity. America needs physical activity. And then 4, like I said, some amount of entrepreneurship, but it's really, that to me is like a classical, like the nouveau liberal arts education is just being well-rounded and being interesting.
Interesting. Good points.
Yeah.
Thanks for doing this, man.
Thanks, man.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.